My name is Daniel Parker, and I used to believe I had the perfect life. I lived in a quiet suburb of New Haven, in a two-story colonial house with a manicured lawn and white picket fence. I was a software engineer, dedicated to my job, meticulous in my work. My wife Emily was a former teacher who now stayed at home to raise our two children, Olivia, 10, and Ethan, 8. Our neighborhood was a tight-knit community. Children played on the streets, and neighbors greeted each other with friendly waves. Weekends were filled with barbecues and soccer games. I was known for my warm smile and helpful nature, always ready to lend a hand or fix a leaky faucet. Emily was beloved for her baking skills. She was the unofficial baker of the block. Our home was a hub of activity. Olivia and Ethan filled the house with laughter and mischief, their boundless energy a constant source of joy. Emily and I had our routine, balancing work, school activities, and family time. We had our occasional arguments, but these were always resolved quickly, leaving no lingering resentment. Emily and I met in college. Our romance blossomed over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of the future. Our love story was like a fairy tale, filled with passion, mutual respect, and a deep sense of partnership. My job provided well for the family, allowing Emily the freedom to stay home and be actively involved in our children's lives. She attended every school event, volunteered for committees, and was known for her ability to juggle multiple tasks with grace. Life for us was, by all accounts, perfect. We were the family others aspired to be, a symbol of stability and happiness. But beneath the surface of our seemingly flawless existence, cracks were beginning to form, unseen and insidious. As the pressures of work and life slowly built up, the once unshakable bond between Emily and me started to strain, setting the stage for a betrayal that would shatter our world. It started with little things, the kind of changes you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. Emily had always been meticulous about her routine, a creature of habit. But lately, her habits began to shift in subtle ways that I couldn't quite put my finger on. She started spending more time on her phone, often smiling at messages, and quickly putting it away when I entered the room. At first, I brushed it off as harmless, assuming she was chatting with friends or scrolling through social media. But as the weeks went by, her behavior became more suspicious. Emily, who once despised leaving the house for errands, now seemed to relish any excuse to go out. She'd dress up more than usual, even for a quick trip to the grocery store. When I questioned her about it, she would laugh it off, saying she just wanted to feel good about herself. I wanted to believe her, so I did. The changes weren't just in her behavior. Our intimacy suffered too. Emily and I had always had a healthy sex life, but now she seemed distant, disinterested. When I tried to initiate, she would often claim she was too tired or not in the mood. On the rare occasions we were intimate, it felt mechanical, devoid of the passion we once shared. I started to notice other things too. She was more secretive about her phone, keeping it with her at all times, even taking it into the bathroom. Our conversations grew shorter, more superficial. She seemed preoccupied, her mind elsewhere even when she was physically present. I tried to dismiss these thoughts, convincing myself that I was overthinking things. But the nagging doubt remained. One evening, Emily received a call while we were watching TV. She glanced at the screen and quickly declined the call, her face flushing with what looked like guilt. "Just a telemarketer," she said with a forced smile. I nodded, but the unease gnawed at me. The final straw came when Emily mentioned needing to attend a weekend work retreat. She hadn't worked in years, and I knew of no such retreats in her volunteer activities. When I pressed her for details, she became defensive, accusing me of being controlling and paranoid. Her reaction was so over the top that it only fueled my suspicions. I decided to do something I never thought I would. I began to keep tabs on her. I checked her phone when she wasn't looking, but it was always locked, and she had changed her passcode. I tried to follow her once when she left the house, but she spotted me and accused me of being distrustful. Her anger and accusations left me feeling guilty, but the doubt lingered. It was clear that something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe the worst. Emily was my wife, my partner, the mother of our children. The idea that she could be unfaithful was too painful to consider. Yet, the signs were there, each one adding to the growing sense of dread in my heart. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The gnawing suspicion eventually became unbearable. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Emily's erratic behavior had chipped away at my trust, and I found myself becoming someone I didn't recognize. Paranoid, desperate, and obsessed with uncovering her secrets. One Friday evening, when Emily mentioned she had a late meeting with her volunteer group, my instincts screamed that something was wrong. She had dressed up more than usual, wearing a new dress and applying makeup as if she were going on a date. As she kissed me goodbye, I caught a whiff of a perfume she hadn't worn in years. The kids were at a sleepover, so I had the house to myself. I decided that tonight would be the night I found out the truth. After she left, I sat in the dark living room, my mind racing. My eyes landed on her laptop, sitting on the coffee table. I had never snooped through her things before, but my desperation overrode any sense of guilt. I opened the laptop and quickly realized she hadn't logged out. Her emails and calendar were open, and I began to sift through them. There it was, a reservation for a luxury hotel downtown, made in her name for that very night. My heart pounded in my chest as I printed the confirmation and the emails exchanged with someone named M. I had no idea who this person was, but I knew I had to go to that hotel. I arrived at the hotel feeling like an intruder in my own life. The opulent lobby with its marble floors and chandeliers felt cold and unwelcoming. I walked to the reception desk, my hands trembling as I handed over the printed reservation. "I'm here to join my wife, Emily Parker," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The receptionist glanced at the reservation and then at me, her professional smile unwavering. "Of course, Mr. Parker. They're in room 312. Shall I call up for you?" "No, thank you," I replied quickly. "I'll surprise her." With my heart in my throat, I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Each step down the corridor felt like walking through quicksand. Finally, I stood in front of room 312. I hesitated, my hand poised to knock, when I heard muffled voices from inside. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized Emily's laugh. Light, flirtatious, the way she used to laugh with me. Rage and sorrow surged through me as I fumbled for the courage to open the door. I slid the keycard into the lock and pushed the door open, my breath catching in my throat at the sight before me. Emily was on the bed, naked, straddling a man I recognized all too well. It was my boss, Michael, his hands gripping her hips as they moved together in a rhythm that shattered my heart. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Time seemed to freeze as I watched my wife in the throes of passion with another man. The sounds of their pleasure filled the room, stabbing into me like knives. The betrayal was so intense that it felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. Finally, the reality of the situation hit me, and I found my voice. "Emily!" Emily gasped and scrambled off Michael, grabbing the sheets to cover herself. Michael sat up, shock and fear in his eyes as he tried to process my presence. The room was filled with a heavy silence, the only sound my ragged breathing. "What the fuck is going on here?" I demanded, my voice breaking with anger and pain. Emily's face twisted in a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, but her words were hollow, meaningless. "Not what it looks like?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You're fucking my boss, Emily. How could you do this to me, to us, to our family?" Michael tried to speak, his voice shaking. "Daniel, Shut the fuck up!" I roared, turning my fury on him. "You're a bastard, Michael. You've been screwing my wife behind my back and you have the nerve to look surprised?" Emily started to cry, her tears flowing freely. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just what, Emily? A mistake? An accident?" I shouted. "You made a choice, and now our marriage is destroyed because of it." I couldn't stay in that room a moment longer. The sight of them, the betrayal, the lies, it was too much. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed down the corridor, a stark punctuation to the end of everything I had believed in. I drove home in a daze, the world outside a blur of lights and shadows. My mind raced with images of Emily and Michael, their betrayal seared into my memory. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my sorrow had turned into a seething rage. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed Emily to understand the depth of her betrayal. When I entered the house, Emily was already there, hastily dressed and looking disheveled. She stood in the living room, her eyes red from crying, but my heart hardened at the sight of her. There was no room for sympathy, no space for forgiveness. "Daniel, please, Let me explain, she began, her voice trembling. Explain? I spat, walking towards her with deliberate steps. You think there's an explanation that can justify what you did? You think saying sorry will fix this? She flinched at the venom in my voice, but pressed on. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake. I never meant to hurt you. A mistake? You call fucking my boss a mistake? I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and devoid of humor. This wasn't some slip-up, Emily. This was a deliberate choice, one you made over and over again. Her tears flowed more freely, but they only fueled my anger. I was lonely, Daniel. You were always working, always so distant. I needed someone, and Michael was there. So, it's my fault now? I stepped closer, my fists clenched. I was working to provide for this family, to give you and the kids everything you wanted, and you repay me by screwing another man? Emily shook her head, her sobs shaking her shoulders. I never wanted it to end like this. I still love you, Daniel. Please, can we try to work through this? Love! I shouted, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You don't know the first thing about love, Emily. Love doesn't betray, it doesn't destroy. You shattered everything we built together, for what? For a few stolen moments with him? Her silence was deafening, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and helplessness. I couldn't stand to look at her any longer. I turned away, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge, of making her feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. You want to know what happens now? I said, my voice low and dangerous. I'll tell you what happens. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going for full custody of the kids. They deserve better than a mother who lies and cheats. Emily's eyes widened in panic. Daniel, no. You can't take the kids away from me. They need their mother. They need a mother they can respect, I replied coldly. And you? You're not that woman anymore. You're a stranger to me. Someone who tore our family apart for her own selfish reasons. She reached out to touch my arm, but I recoiled as if her touch burned. Please, Daniel, think about what this will do to them. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. Fix this? I repeated, my anger rising again. You think sitting in a room with a therapist will erase the fact that you fucked my boss? That you lied to my face every day? No, Emily, this isn't something you can fix. I could see the realization dawning in her eyes, the understanding that there was no going back. Her tears fell faster, her sobs louder, but I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. You've made your bed, Emily, I said, my voice steely. Now you have to lie in it, alone. I left the room, her cries echoing in my ears, but I didn't look back. I headed to the study and started gathering documents, preparing for the legal battle ahead. Emily's betrayal had shattered my world, but I was determined to come out stronger, to protect my children from the fallout of her actions. As I sat at my desk, the anger and pain coursing through me, I knew one thing for certain. Emily would pay for what she had done, and I would make sure she felt the weight of her betrayal every single day. As the days turned into weeks, my anger crystallized into a cold, determined resolve. Emily had to face the consequences of her actions, and I was going to ensure she felt the full brunt of her betrayal. The thought of our children being exposed to her deceit infuriated me, and I vowed to shield them from her influence as much as possible. I began by gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator to dig into Emily's affair with Michael. The investigator, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for thoroughness, quickly compiled a damning dossier. Photos of their clandestine meetings, text messages exchanged, and even hotel receipts, all meticulously documented. With this arsenal, I felt more prepared to confront the legal battle ahead. But it wasn't enough just to end the marriage. Emily had to understand the depth of her betrayal, and Michael needed to realize the cost of his actions. I planned my moves carefully, ensuring that my revenge would be as devastating as possible without crossing legal boundaries. First, I decided to hit Michael where it hurt the most: his career. I compiled the evidence of the affair into an anonymous packet and mailed it to the board of directors at our company. Michael's position as my boss made his actions not only unethical, but also grounds for dismissal. The board acted swiftly, and within a week, Michael was called into a meeting. He was terminated for gross misconduct, his reputation in shambles. Watching him pack up his office, the same office where he had betrayed me, was a small but satisfying victory. Next, I turned my attention to Emily. I filed for divorce, citing adultery and seeking full custody of our children. Armed with the evidence, my lawyer assured me that the court would favor my case. Emily was served with divorce papers at her mother's house, where she had retreated in the aftermath of our confrontation. Her reaction was immediate and predictable. Hysterical phone calls, desperate texts, pleas for forgiveness. I ignored them all. Emily's social circle was the next target. I made sure that the evidence of her infidelity found its way to her closest friends and family. The fallout was swift and brutal. Friends who had once admired her distanced themselves, their respect turning to scorn. Her parents, conservative and deeply religious, were devastated. They called me, pleading for understanding, but my heart was hardened. Then came the financial repercussions. I'd always managed our finances, and I knew the intricacies of our accounts. I ensured that Emily's access to our joint accounts was restricted, leaving her dependent on the minimal support I was legally obligated to provide until the divorce was finalized. The house, bought with my earnings, was another battleground. I filed to keep the property, arguing that uprooting the children from their home would be detrimental to their well-being. The court sided with me, and Emily was forced to move out. The final piece of my revenge was more personal, aimed directly at Emily's sense of security and self-worth. I enrolled our children in counseling, making sure they understood that their mother's actions had consequences. I never spoke ill of her to them, but I made sure they knew that trust and honesty were paramount in our family. Slowly, the kids began to see the cracks in the facade Emily had presented. They became more distant from her, their disappointment palpable. Emily tried to fight back, of course. She attempted to paint me as a vindictive, controlling husband, but the evidence was irrefutable. Her pleas fell on deaf ears in the courtroom. The judge granted me full custody, allowing Emily only supervised visits until she could prove her stability and commitment to the children's well-being. In the end, Emily was left with nothing but the cold reality of her choices. Michael was out of her life, his career in ruins. Her friends had turned their backs, and her family viewed her with a mixture of pity and disappointment. Financially, she was struggling, and her relationship with our children was fractured. I felt a grim satisfaction as I watched her life unravel. Emily had destroyed our marriage, our family, and my trust. In return, I had ensured that she paid the price for her betrayal. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about making sure she understood the gravity of her actions. As I moved forward, rebuilding my life with my children, I found a sense of peace. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but I was determined to create a new, honest life for us. Emily's betrayal had been a cruel twist of fate, but I had turned it into a catalyst for reclaiming my dignity and protecting my family. The divorce trial was a grueling process, a battlefield where every detail of our lives was scrutinized and dissected. The courtroom, with its sterile decor and somber atmosphere, became the stage for the final act of our shattered marriage. Emily arrived each day looking drained and anxious, her eyes constantly darting around the room as if searching for an escape. I, on the other hand, had steeled myself for this moment. My lawyer, a sharp and formidable woman named Karen, had prepared me meticulously, and I felt ready to face whatever Emily and her attorney would throw my way. The first few days were focused on presenting the evidence of Emily's infidelity. Karen laid out the case with precision, introducing the photos, text messages, and hotel receipts that the private investigator had gathered. Each piece of evidence was a dagger, cutting through any remaining illusions about Emily's character. Emily's lawyer tried to paint a different picture, one of a neglected wife seeking solace in a moment of weakness. They brought up my long hours at work, suggesting that I had emotionally abandoned Emily, leaving her vulnerable to Michael's advances. But Karen was relentless, countering each argument with facts and logic. "Mr. Parker," Karen said, addressing me during my testimony, "can you explain the measures you took to balance your work and family life?" I nodded, my voice steady. I made sure to spend quality time with my children whenever I was home. I took them to their activities, helped with their homework, and made every effort to be present despite my demanding job. My priority has always been my family. The judge listened intently, her expression neutral but attentive. Emily's lawyer cross-examined me, attempting to poke holes in my testimony, but the facts were on my side. The evidence of Emily's affair, combined with my dedication to our children, painted a clear picture. Emily's turn on the stand was painful to watch. She was visibly shaken, her voice trembling as she tried to justify her actions. She spoke about feeling lonely and neglected, about the emotional void that Michael had filled. But the judge's eyes remained cold and assessing, unimpressed by Emily's attempts to garner sympathy. "Mrs. Parker," the judge finally said, her tone stern, "adultery is a serious matter, especially when it involves a person in a position of trust, like your husband's employer. The evidence presented leaves little doubt about the nature of your actions." Emily's tears flowed freely, but they did nothing to sway the judge's opinion. The trial continued, moving on to the issue of custody. Here, Karen was particularly ruthless, emphasizing my role as the primary caregiver and the stability I provided for our children. "Our children deserve a stable and loving environment," I said during my testimony. "I can provide that for them. Emily's actions have shown a lack of judgment and responsibility, which is not in their best interest." Emily's lawyer argued for joint custody, claiming that Emily was still a loving mother who deserved a chance to rebuild her relationship with the kids. But the evidence of her affair, her erratic behavior, and the impact on our children was undeniable. The judge deliberated for what felt like an eternity, the courtroom filled with a tense silence. Finally, she spoke, her verdict clear and decisive. "Given the circumstances, I am awarding Mr. Parker full custody of the children," she said. "Mrs. Parker will have supervised visitation rights until she can demonstrate a stable and responsible lifestyle. The division of assets will proceed as outlined in the evidence presented." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. The weight of the past months lifted slightly, replaced by a sense of justice and resolution. Emily's sobs filled the room, but I couldn't bring myself to feel any sympathy. She had brought this upon herself. As we left the courtroom, Karen patted me on the back. "You did well, Daniel. Now you can focus on rebuilding your life." Emily approached me, her eyes red and swollen. "Daniel, please, can we talk?" I looked at her, the woman I had once loved, and felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. "There's nothing left to say, Emily. This is the end." With that, I turned and walked away, ready to start the next chapter of my life without her. The divorce had been a brutal, painful process, but it had also been necessary. Emily's betrayal had destroyed our marriage, but it had also given me the clarity and strength to move forward, to build a new life for myself and my children. The days following the trial felt like a fresh start, albeit one tinged with the lingering shadows of past pain. The children and I moved back into the house, our house, reclaiming it as a sanctuary free from the deceit and betrayal that had once tainted it. The atmosphere was different, lighter, hopeful. We were ready to rebuild our lives one day at a time. The first step was making the house feel like home again. We repainted the walls, replacing the dull, neutral tones with bright, lively colors. Olivia and Ethan chose their room colors, filling the spaces with their personalities. The laughter and joy of decorating together helped to begin the healing process. We spent weekends at furniture stores, picking out new pieces that symbolized new beginnings. Counseling sessions for the kids continued, and I started attending therapy as well. It was essential to process the anger, betrayal, and grief. My therapist, Dr. Morales, was a beacon of support and wisdom. She helped me navigate the complex emotions and guided me towards self-forgiveness and understanding. "Daniel, you need to remember that healing is a journey, not a destination," she would say, her voice calm and reassuring. "Allow yourself to feel the pain, but also allow yourself to find joy in the small moments." And so I focused on those small moments. I reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with during the chaos of my marriage. They welcomed me back with open arms, providing a support network that I desperately needed. We went on camping trips, had barbecue nights, and enjoyed simple, honest conversations that reminded me of who I was before the turmoil. Work became a place of solace as well. With Michael gone, the atmosphere at the office was markedly different. I was promoted to his position, a bittersweet victory, but one that allowed me to focus on my career with renewed vigor. My colleagues rallied around me, their respect and support a constant source of strength. Life gradually found a new rhythm. I was both a father and a mother to Olivia and Ethan, juggling work and parenting with a balance that, while challenging, felt deeply fulfilling. We established new traditions: Friday movie nights, Sunday morning pancakes, and spontaneous road trips to explore new places. One Saturday we drove to the coast, the salty breeze and crashing waves a welcome escape. We built sandcastles, collected seashells, and for the first time in a long while, I saw genuine happiness in my children's eyes. As we sat by a bonfire that evening, roasting marshmallows, Olivia looked up at me and said, "I love our new life, Dad." Her words were a balm to my soul, affirming that we were on the right path. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving, about finding joy and purpose in each day. In time, I even found room for new love. Her name was Rachel, a fellow parent from the kids' school. We met during a PTA meeting, her kindness and warmth standing out immediately. She was a widow, raising her daughter alone, and we connected over shared experiences of loss and rebuilding. Our relationship grew slowly, built on trust and mutual respect. Rachel understood the complexities of my past and never pushed me beyond what I was ready for. Our relationship was a partnership, each of us supporting the other in our journey forward. The children adored her, and her daughter, Lily, became like a sister to Olivia and Ethan. Together, we formed a new blended family, finding strength and joy in our unity. Reflecting on the journey from betrayal to this new life, I realized that the experience had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. It had forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to acknowledge my strength, and to prioritize what truly mattered: my children, my integrity, and my happiness. Emily's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also been a catalyst for profound change. It had shown me the importance of self-worth and the power of resilience. Through the pain, I had discovered a new depth of love and connection with my children, and found a partner who truly understood and respected me. As I stood on the porch of our newly redecorated home, watching the children play in the yard, I felt a sense of peace. Life would always have its challenges, but I had learned to face them with courage and grace. We had created a new life, one built on honesty, love, and the unwavering belief that we deserved happiness. The future was no longer a source of fear or uncertainty. It was a canvas, ready to be filled with the colors of our new beginnings. And as I looked at Rachel, who stood beside me, her hand in mine, I knew that we were ready to face it together, stronger and more united than ever before.